should the federal government be involved in forcing that in the sense by an agreement where you would lose money and benefits and what have you if you don't abide by that? Because it creates a really awkward relationship that could be twisted all sorts of ways in other administrations to come, Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter which one. So, one of the things that's been going on recently in the higher education world, and again, why do I talk about universities? Because it's where we train the next generation of scientists. Okay. One of the reasons one of the things that's going on, excuse me, is this issue of the compact for higher education that has been produced by the White House, or seems to have been produced. Now, I will get to that in a second and why I'm saying that. And the idea being essentially that we all know, and if you follow this channel, you know full well by now that a lot of universities do receive federal funding from a number of different aspects of the federal government, whether it be professors putting in proposals for research grants or any number of different things. Okay, fine. What the Trump administration has put forward is that for universities to if universities sign on to the compact, they will get preferential treatment for funding from the federal government. Okay. As a general rule, I don't think it's a good idea to have too much federal government involvement in anything, just as a general rule. But here's the interesting thing about it. So, document requires signatories to make sweeping changes to policies and practices. A number of institutions have already said no, and more responses are expected. So this is how universities are responding to Trump's compact from inside higher education. And you can see here the list in that, University of Southern California, Grand Canyon University. There's no one who said outright yes. But there have been a couple of takers to say, yeah, sure, we're kind of interested. Yeah, sure, we're kind of interested. And yeah, we'll provide some feedback. The rest have basically said no. And this is where it gets interesting, because what I want to do is I'm going to go through this article from Insider Education, and then I'm actually going to flip over to the compact itself. Compact in quotes, and I'll explain why in a second. Just to be able to show you guys this is what it actually says, and let you all go on your merry way for yourselves with that one. In the months since Trump officials asked university leaders, this was dated, October 24th originally, and it was updated November 4th. Anyway, in the months since Trump officials asked university leaders to give feedback on their plan to ensure that colleges are adhering to the administration's priorities, several of those leaders and others in higher ed have made clear that the proposal is a non-starter, at least in its current form. So far, leaders at 12 universities have publicly said they won't sign the current draft of the, quote, Compact for Academic Excellence in Higher Education, according to an Inside Higher Ed database. 2 others have indicated interest in signing. Universities will be added to the map and table below as they make public statements. The wide-ranging proposal would require universities to ban consideration of race or sex in hiring and admissions, freeze tuition, commit to not considering transgender women to be women, and shut down departments that punish, belittle, or spark violence against conservative ideas, among other provisions. Trump officials say universities that sign on could get access to some benefits, such as preferential treatment for grant funding. But those that don't want to adhere to the agreement are free to, quote, forego federal benefits. Interesting choice of language there in that. But anyway, higher ed leaders and observers see the compact as the Trump administration's blueprint for overhauling America's colleges and universities. Trump officials view it as an opportunity for the, quote, proactive improvement of higher education for the betterment of the country, end quote. Critics have urged institutions to reject the proposal, arguing it undermines institutions' independence and carries steep penalties. 9 universities were initially asked October 1st to give limited targeted feedback by October 20th on the document that Trump officials said was largely in its final form. We'll talk about that in a second, but anyway, President Trump said in mid-October that any college that wants to return to the pursuit of truth and achievement could sign on, but didn't explain how interested institutions could do so. No college has publicly taken Trump up on his offer. The administration is reportedly planning to update the document in response to feedback and send out a new version in November. Now, this is why I say the compact. and it might be largely in its final form, but the fact that this is there's going to be some updates provided. Let me come back here. It's just to make a point in that you do have colleges that have interest. You have colleges that are specifically saying, you know what, we'll provide some feedback for you, those kinds of things, instead of those that have just outright rejected it. And again, rejected in its current form. So this is kind of where we're at with this. It's not necessarily a no never as much as not the way this currently looks. Okay, fine. This is, oh shoot, let me go back to the beginning here. This is actually the compact itself, the draft that was sent, and there's an associated letter here now. If you're wondering how I'm looking at all of these things, they are actually linked here off of the, this is the actual compact document. This is the letter to the universities. So I have it here for you. This article, of course, will be linked in the comments of the video for you. So I encourage you to go read through it and read through the compact yourself. But I am going to walk through at least some of the things here in the compact. This is not well, this is only 10 pages. It's actually not super long as government documents go. American higher education is the envy of the world and represents a key strategic benefit for our nation. In turn, the U.S. university system benefits in a variety of ways from its extraordinary relationship with the U.S. government. These include 1. Access to student loans, grant programs, and federal contracts. 2. Funding for research directly or indirectly. That goes back to the RFPs and grant proposals related for sciences. 3. Approval of student and other visas in connection with university matriculation and instruction. And 4. Preferential treatment under the tax code. To advance the national interest arising out of this unique relationship, this compact for academic excellence in higher education represents the priorities of the U.S. government in its engagements with universities that benefit from the relationship. Institutions of higher education are free to develop models and values other than those below, if the institution elects to forego federal benefits. Now, as I said at the start, I'm not a huge fan of getting a huge amount of government involvement in anything. And as time has gone on, I have been of the mind that the current model we have for funding a lot of scientific research, where a chunk of it comes from federal agencies, I think, what is it? The NSF one I did a while back was about, there was a video I did a while back where the NSF basically showed it was like 40-ish% of basic research is actually funded by the federal government across the whole, the whole possible many disciplines of science. So there is that, and over time it's been decreasing since about the 80s, thereabouts. So over the last 40 years, it's been decreasing thereabouts. So things like that. But I am not a fan of having the government get involved in anything to say you must do this or you won't get money, because there's a lot of slippery slope there in terms of what can happen with that. So this is just a point to make on the beginning that I would be leery of going anywhere near this just for that reason alone. But let's point to some of the other things that this compact would want universities to adopt. Discriminatory admissions. So, quality in admissions. Discriminatory admissions processes reflect a fundamental misunderstanding not only of the civil rights law and the U.S. Constitution, but of the damaging impacts such practices have on individuals and our nation as a whole. Therefore, no factors such as sex, ethnicity, race, nationality, political views, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious associations, or proxies for any of these factors shall be considered explicitly or implicitly in any decision related to undergraduate or graduate student admissions or financial support, with due exceptions for institutions that are solely or primarily comprised of students of a specific sex or religious denomination. Okay. Institutions shall have all undergraduate applicants take a widely used standardized test, the SAT, the ACT, or the CLT, for example, or program-specific measures of accomplishment in the case of music, art, and other specialized programs of study. The university shall publicly report anonymized data for admitted and rejected students, including GPA. Okay. That is an interesting one in and of itself, because it just does go right to civil rights law. I question how much is necessary because of Supreme Court precedents in the last couple of years, but, let's see. Marketplace of ideals and civil discourse. Truth-seeking is a core function of institutions of higher education. I want to make a point on this one. We have to agree on that first, what the core function of universities are at this point. I actually tend to agree with that statement, but What is that core function? Do we all agree on that? That would be the one particular thing to consider. Um, Fulfilling this mission requires maintaining a vibrant marketplace of ideas where different views can be explored, debated, and challenged. Therefore, signatories to this compact commit themselves to fostering a vibrant marketplace of ideas on campus. A vibrant marketplace of ideas requires an intellectually open campus environment and a broad spectrum of ideological viewpoints present and no single ideology dominant, both along political and other relevant lines. Signatories commit themselves to revising governance structures as necessary to create such an environment, including but not limited to transforming or abolishing institutional units that purposefully punish, belittle, or even spark violence against conservative ideas. Given the importance of academic freedom in the marketplace of ideas, signatories shall adopt a policy protecting academic freedom in classrooms, teaching, research, and scholarship. Such policies also shall recognize that academic freedom is not absolute, and universities shall adopt policies that prevent discriminatory, threatening, harassing, or other behaviors that abridge the rights of other members of the university community. Let's see. And this goes on from here to talk about issues with harassment and what have you, and conditions of civility that are required for debate and what have you. See, this is again where I get hesitant in having federal government involved to dictate what things should be like, though this should actually just be what it is on a campus. You should be able to intellectually discuss different ideas and not be subject to harassment or belittling or anything like that. And not just if you're conservative, right? I want this for everybody kind of thing myself. I really want that for everybody. So I get hesitant with the idea of the administration enforcing this on all universities, because this is one thing to consider that's very important here. Said it elsewhere, I know others have said it too. Public universities that receive public dollars are bound by the First Amendment, particularly with regards to their students, with some restrictions in time, place, and manner, particularly with regards to the classroom. Okay. Private universities are technically not. Now, because they have that special role of truth-seeking and what have you and doing education, they tend to abide by academic freedom standards. And there's also been the advancement of institutional neutrality in those different institutions. More on that in a minute. But I get really, really hesitant about a federal government enforcing such things as a condition of getting funding or preferential treatment from the federal government or what have you, because how quickly could this turn on its head, is one of the things I say. Now, one of the arguments that there might be in there is that, well, maybe it's the government's job to protect the rights of all the folks involved. I don't know what I think of that just yet, as I've been thinking more about this. It's such a thorny thing that I have a hard time even determining what I think, but I am generally very, very hesitant to have the federal government involved in anything. Basically, I'm more of the camp the federal government should be as small as possible. Non-discrimination in faculty and administrative hiring. As one federal judge recently noted in disbelief, in the year 2024, in the United States of America, in the state of California, in the city of Los Angeles, Jewish students were excluded from portions of the UCLA campus because they refused to denounce their faith. This fact is so unimaginable and so abhorrent to our constitutional guarantee of religious freedom that it bears repeating. Jewish students were excluded from portions of the UCLA campus because they refused to denounce their faith. UCLA does not dispute this. Instead, UCLA claims that it has no responsibility to protect the religious freedom of its Jewish students because the exclusion was engineered by third-party protesters. But under constitutional principles, UCLA may not allow services to some students when UCLA knows that other students are excluded on religious grounds, regardless of who engineered the exclusion. This is Franklin versus the Regents of the University of California. It's California 2024. A steadfast commitment to rigorous and meritocratic selection based on objective and measurable criteria in the appointment process is pivotal for a university's sustained excellence. Consistent with the requirements of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act and other federal employment discrimination statutes, no factors such as sex, ethnicity, race, national origin, and what have you, frankly, this is just basically asking folks to abide by existing civil rights law. But if I read that right, that's actually just what that's asking for. Please abide by actual civil rights law, right? Which is a surprise. Interesting. Interesting. I mean, I technically don't have a problem with that, but again, as a condition of funding, I don't know with that one. Institutional neutrality. Signatories shall maintain institutional neutrality at all levels of their administration. This requires that all university employees, in their capacity as university representatives, will abstain from actions or speech relating to societal and political events, except in cases in which external events have a direct impact on the university. Policies requiring institutional neutrality must apply with equal force to all of the university's academic units, including all colleges, faculties, schools, departments, programs, centers, and institutes. This comes from the president of Dartmouth. Consider a student interested in majoring in a certain subject. Upon going to the department homepage to discover course offering, the student is slapped in the face with an official statement excoriating his own political ideology. How comfortable would that student feel taking a class in that department? Our principles of institutional restraint permit departments to issue public statements only on limited issues directly related to their academic expertise. Rather than publishing these proclamations on their homepages, departments must create new web pages specifically dedicated to public statements and endorsements. This ensures that departments promote their academic missions, not social or political beliefs. So I've talked about institutional neutrality a lot on this channel, and I am generally for it. I do think universities themselves should adopt that. And it goes back to, I think it's the Calvin Report, where the university is the home and sponsor of critics, but it is not itself a critic of society or things going on, with some narrow exceptions of things that directly affect the university. But professors and students and what have you should be free to comment on anything going on as they see fit. But it is having the force of the university or the department or something like that behind it. That's where it is not necessarily a good idea, because you're putting a stamp of power and authority for the students and the employees in there on one particular point over another. And that's what the president of Dartmouth was essentially explaining. Should that be enforced by the federal government, though? I really don't necessarily like that idea. That's where I get a little bit squeamish about it. Like I said, it's like federal government enforcing all of this is a bit more interesting. Commit to grade integrity. Okay, student learning. See, this is the kind of stuff that wasn't featured in that Inside Higher Ed article. That's one of the reasons I wanted to show this compact as it is. And again, I encourage you all to go read it for yourselves. Come to your own conclusions. Signatories commit to grade integrity in the use of defensible standards for whether students are achieving their goals, with each grade reflecting the quality, breadth, and depth of students' achievement. Signatories acknowledge that a grade must not be inflated or deflated for any non-academic reason, but only rigorously reflect the demonstrated mastery of a subject that the grade purports to represent. Signatories will use public accountability mechanisms to demonstrate their commitment to grade integrity, such as publishing grade distribution dashboards with multi-year trend lines, public statements that explain student outcomes, and any unusual upward trends and comparisons with peer institutions. Now, if you recall, in the past week, I did the whole thing on Harvard grade inflation. That's what this is going toward, effectively, is, hey, just make sure your students are not, earning the grades. Generally, again, something I don't have a problem with. Is that the job of the federal government to force that through the condition of being able to get more grant funding? Again, squeamishness. This is actually an idea that I'm okay with that schools should do. Should the federal government be the one enforcing that in some way? Students shall be treated as individuals, not on the basis of their immutable characteristics. This goes back to the issues of equality and what have you in here. And although I think that's in here where it defines the man-woman thing here as mentioned in that Times article. I'm trying to be a little brief just so this video doesn't run too long. Let's see. Financial responsibility. Too many young adults have become saddled with life altering debt that has affected, among other things, their ability to have a family or purchase a home. Universities have a duty to control their costs, including by eliminating unnecessary administrative staff, reducing tuition burdens, engaging in transparent accounting and regular auditing for misuse of funds, and cutting unnecessary costs. Signatories acknowledge that universities that receive federal funds have a duty to reduce administrative costs as far as reasonably possible and streamline or eliminate academic programs that fail to serve students. How do you define the fail to serve students is the part I would wonder about there. Towards this end, signatories to this compact commit to freezing the effective tuition rates charged to American students for the next 5 years. You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of another bad policy that I really don't like, and that's rent freezes. Actually, because the problems with the rent freeze is if you freeze it at a certain level for a couple of years, you're basically cutting off the slim amount of margin that most landlords get, and you are then starting to eat away at the maintenance budget, which is why rent freezes tend to not work so well, as the properties can't be maintained. Landlords don't have enough money to do that when you freeze the rent, and they're not allowed to increase the price at the rate of inflation or something along that line, at least. This kind of reminds me of that, because it's not like the different universities and colleges don't have to deal with costs going up on different things themselves and have to adjust their tuition rates as a result. So I don't know that I like that idea either. Unless there's some pretty dang clear guidelines of how. Anyway. Furthermore, universities poorly equip students when they fail to inform them about the likely life earnings for students' chosen majors or admit students without the skills or support needed to succeed. Universities shall publicly post statistics about average earnings from graduates in each academic program and shall refund tuition to students who drop out during the first academic term of their undergraduate studies. Okay, well, maybe first academic term I might be okay with, because maybe you realize it's not for you, right? You want to go somewhere else. After that, of course, it would be different, but of course, it might be a little bit different, but, this is another one where I'm like, should the federal government enforce it? But it's actually, to my mind, quite a good idea. And I would, for those folks who are parents and what have you, did you get parents? Let's say if you're a parent who's gotten a kid who just went to college and is in a particular major, have your students, were your kids, your students, given something from their respective universities about, okay, you're going into this major, you can do this career, this career, this career, and they generally make this much? That's a fair actual question, because I think it's actually good to tell students that so they can understand what they're getting into. Yes, go into something that makes you passionate. I'm not saying don't do that, but at the same time, understand what you can make out of that career position. I think I found that on my own when I went go researching for my own career, what I could make, and a salary, at least back at that time, and that was 15, 20-ish years ago at this point. No, not quite that old, but it was a while ago. And that I think is still very helpful for students planning their future, and the like there. So let's see. Signatories shall responsibly deploy their endowments to the public good. Any university with an endowment exceeding $2 million per undergraduate student will not charge tuition for admitted students pursuing hard science programs, with exceptions as desired for families of substantial means. Sorry, no offense. Well, forget the no offense part. Who the heck is the federal government to tell a university what to do with their endowment? Like, I've agreed that, like, hey, maybe you should use your endowments to fund some of the research and all this other kind of stuff, things like that. But who is the federal government to tell a university what to do with their own endowments? That's again, things that make me squeamish. Universities should also make efforts to expand professional opportunities for America's military service members and veterans. To that end, signatories shall commit to accepting full transfer credits from the Joint Service Transcript of military service members and veterans enrolling in undergraduate and graduate programs, applying it to general education course requirements and, where relevant, major-specific course requirements. I mean, again, one of those things, it's nice if you do that, and I would encourage universities to do that. Is it the federal government's job to force that? Let's see. Foreign entanglements must comply with the anti-law. Yeah, I mean this seems a bunch of stuff as I'm reading it here that is primarily about making sure you're not getting tangled up in bad foreign things. um, retain but universities agree to maintain an anti-money laundering and KYC, what is KYC? Know Your Customer program in accordance with the Bank Secrecy Act as amended by the US Patriot Act and other applicable federal laws and regulations, including Section 117 of the Higher Education Act. The program is reasonably designed to prevent university services from being used to facilitate money laundering and financing of terrorist activities and to ensure transparency and public accountability. Program includes the following: verify counterpart. Okay. Oh, wow. Federal section is a bit long. Federal permission for foreign student visas is intended to further America's natural interest to the extent that the selected foreign students exhibit extraordinary talent that promises to make America stronger and more economically productive. And the selected students are introduced to and supportive of American and Western values, ultimately increasing global understanding and appreciation for the United States and our way of life. Universities that rely on foreign students to fund their institutions, among other things, potentially reducing available spots. I mean, I generally think it's a good idea to be supportive of American and Western values. I do too. It might just be a question mark of if there's a First Amendment case there for that. Given, again, you're talking about condition of funding with the federal government. So I don't know that that's not legally squirrely to put something like that in there. Myself, it would seem to me that it might be a bit legally squirrely now that I think about it. Let's see. No more than 15% of a university's undergraduate student population shall be participants in a student visa exchange program, and no more than 5% shall be from any one country. For schools presently over the 15% population, incoming matriculating classes should meet the 15% cap. So in other words, current students are unaffected. Signatories pledge to select those foreign students on the basis of demonstrably extraordinary talent, rather than on the basis of financial advantage to the university, to screen out students who demonstrate hostility to the United States, its allies, or its values, and to provide instruction in American civics to all foreign students. Universities shall share all known information about foreign students, including discipline records, upon request and as relevant, with the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of State. This goes to current discussions around immigration and what have you here. Which I had a comment on this in a different video a while back, is the question of what are the universities for? Are U.S. universities meant for U.S. students? Again, with exceptional foreign talent also brought in to bear too. It's not saying no to that. Again, should that be forced by the federal government? Even if I think it's a good thing? Like I said, I'm a little squeamish on a bunch of these things as to whether or not it's a good idea to have that be forced. As a recipient of significant funding and other benefits, all universities shall promptly and fully disclose all funding from foreign institutions and individuals. No foreign funding may in any way encourage or restrict the hiring of persons or the teaching of particular perspective or the admission of any foreign student or group of students. Failure to fully disclose, okay, is considered a violation of the compact. Let's see. The last two sections here are actually and of course there's one blank page. Good grief. The last two sections here are the exceptions. Religious institution may maintain preferences for religious affiliation. Single-sex institution, any institution maintain preferences for admissions for American citizens. So things like that, with the exception of certain things in Title IX and what have you. Leadership of an academic institution is directly responsible for its strategy, success, and adherence. On an annual basis, the university's president, provost, and head of administration will be required to certify the university's adherence to the principles contained herein. The university shall annually shall conduct or hire an external party. You realize that part might actually get really expensive for some universities to do. Though some of them do it already, actually, now that I think about it. But let's see, external party to conduct an independent, good faith, empirically rigorous, and anonymous poll of its faculty, students, and staff, providing them with an opportunity to evaluate the university performance against the compact. The results of such surveys shall be made public and available on the university's website. Adherence to this agreement shall be subject to review by the Department of Justice. Universities having found to have willfully or negligently violated this agreement shall lose access to benefits of the agreement for a period of no less than 1 year. Subsequent, okay, that's all about enforcement. This is the draft, again, emphasize, draft compact, because they're still in the midst of finalizing it, as it were. Like we found out here at the very end, administration is reportedly planning to update the document and send out a new version in November. And I am going to leave you to, I very much encourage you to read the actual compact yourself, draft compact yourself, and think about, like I was kind of doing on the fly here, think about what you think of it and whether or not you think it's appropriate and all this other kind of jazz. It's up to you. Your call on that. Not to just rely on this document, not to just rely on news articles and things like that, but read the compact yourself and see what you think. Like I said, a bunch of the ideas in there, I'm generally in favor of myself with respect to universities. Should the federal government be involved in forcing that in the sense by an agreement where you would lose money and benefits and what have you if you don't abide by that, because it creates a really awkward relationship that could be twisted all sorts of ways in other administrations to come, Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter which one. So I get really leery about that kind of thing. And I tend not to want to see that kind of thing happen as much. But let me know what you think. Hit the like button on the way out the door, comment on the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, all that lovely good jazz. Until next time, I'm Adrian. Stay curious.